Well, this is the end of the welcome session, and again I would like to thank the representatives of Australia City and the Australia Zoo Director for their welcoming. Now we are going to the second session, which is the first dedicated to conservation work. And this new session about the insights in conservation strategy of EASA members will be chaired by Simon Rusmu, which is the Copenhagen Conservation Director and Vice Chair of the Conservation Committee. And yes, there are different strategies and different ways of getting conservation done and to follow the conservation field standards that were approved. And I think that this session is important to help people to see how we can work with that. Come on, Simon.
Thank you, Eric. So, being the Vice Chair of the Conservation Committee, that means I'm your co-vice host of this event. So I'm very pleased to announce here 4 excellent starting speakers, and it's to kick off a fantastic conference. I think the content is it is a full conference, but it definitely is some inspiring and interesting talks for us ahead in the coming days. And to me, the EASA Conservation Forum is just, I know my family, we have lots of great events, but the forum, the Conservation Forum, is just the best. There's no doubt, it's small, it's clear, it connects to people from outside EASA, and it's always been inspiring for me, and I've been at least at 3 now. The new EASA Field Conservation Standards was approved last year, and this is a new step for us in EASA, because with now all EASA members must engage in conservation work. And this is the point number 1. We need to start. It is scalable. We are all on a journey into conservation. But now the scale starts at 1 and not at 0. So everybody has to do something for conservation, and this is the next step. And that's what we're going to hear about in this session. All of our institutions also need to report about conservation, and we heard about the conservation database, which is our most important tool for this. And thirdly, we all need to have a plan. We need to have either a strategy or some thinking about how we want to engage in conservation. And of course we need to still stay agile, we still need to be engaging, we need to respond on crisis, we need to respond on opportunities. But we still need to have some kind of philosophy of how we want to go about doing that. And it's about upping our reputation, it's about setting ourselves up for success. And as my wonderful colleague Christine Luce always says, we just gotta stop doing random shit. So, the topics we'll be hearing today, and this is a topic that's going to be throughout the conference, is about how do we make these plans and how do we make them work, and how do we talk openly about getting this right. And in the end of this session, Meryl will have a task for you, so you can stay prepared for that. It will be in the app. But I'll kick this off with Jeroen, who is from Rotterdam Zoo. And he will be talking about their forward-thinking master plan all the way to 2050. So, and it's a lot about collaboration, so I'm looking forward to hear that. Jeroen, take it away.
Thank you. So yeah, again, my name is Jeroen Kappelhoff. I'm the research officer of Rotterdam Zoo. And last November we presented our new master plan 2050. And I'm glad to tell you more about it today. So yeah, our Master Plan 2050 Experience Project Blijdorp. And with this new Master Plan there's also a new mission, and that is together we bring nature back to life. And I think the most important word in this new mission is the word together. We have quite an ambition, and we are aware of that, and we are also aware that we cannot do this on our own. And that we need, for example, you or other partners in situ and ex situ to achieve our goals. Another thing that changed is that from now on we say that species conservation and nature restoration is our primary goal of the zoo. And of course, it's not new for us to work on these two topics, but what I think is new is that from now on, it's again our primary goal, and everything that we do, all our activities, all the marketing, etc., it all needs to be in the light of this goal. Because we believe that we can make the biggest impact outside our zoo. So what's our goal? Our main goal is that we, in 2050, significantly contributed to saving 10 critically endangered species of animals and plants. And of course, this is a more popular way of saying that. So what we mean by that is that by 2050, our aim is to improve their conservation status on the IUCN Red List with significant contributions from our side. And we decided to focus on 10 species. So these are our 10. And those are the pygmy hippo, Asian elephant, the lesser Antillean iguana, Ruppel's vulture, red panda, Dalmatian pelican, flapper's gate, Vietnamese pond turtle, surgeonfish, and Rwanda water lily. So a couple of things about this. So what we find very important is that our 10 are a good representation of the animal kingdom. So not just mammals or fish or whatever, but a good representation of the whole animal kingdom. So how did we came to this stand? Well, we came to the stand to look at our history and our expertise. So asking ourselves the question, for which species can we really make an impact? For example, for the Asian elephant, we are already the steppe keeper since the 19th, so that allowed us to build a lot of expertise and also to build up a good network within the in-situ and ex-situ world. So from now on, we will really focus on these 10. But that doesn't mean that that are the only things that we will do or the only species that we will keep in our zoo, of course. So for the rest of the species that we keep, we said we will look within our EASA community for which species we have very good projects. Like for example the black rhinoceros that we already reintroduced in some African countries. So that could be a reason to say we also continue to keep black rhinoceros. So, but we will focus in our conservation efforts on these 10. And of course what we also said is not set in stone. It's possible that after 2 years we need to say, okay, yeah, we are not the ones for this species to really make this impact. And then we also need to allow us to change this list and to update it to our new insights. Or maybe we can enlarge it to even 15 or 20 in the nearby future. So what we think is essential is that we really need to combine and to link species conservation with nature restoration. Of course, species conservation is not new for our community and also not new for our zoo. But you can ask yourself, what's the value of species conservation without nature restoration? So we said we really need to link those two, especially for the 10 species on which we are focusing. And you also see that in our guiding principles. So we have 4 guiding principles, 2 focusing on species conservation and 2 focusing on nature restoration. So for species conservation, we have stop the loss and reverse the red. So stop the loss is really focusing on species of which there are less than 1,000 individuals left in the wild. So really the species, the extinct in the wild or nearly extinct in the wild. And for them we can just start breeding programs, building conservation breeding facilities, but we really need to breed to increase the number of individuals for these species. Reverse the red is of course a known term in our community, and I think under this umbrella we see our EEP work. So for a couple of the 10, we are the EEP STAPO coordinator, and I think the One Plan approach, as we are already aware of, is really mimicking this guiding principle. And then we have 2 guiding principles in the field of nature restoration, and that's expand the green and brighten the blue. And I think it's logic, expand the green is focusing on nature restoration on land, and brighten the blue is nature restoration in the oceans and seas and fresh water, of course. So I will now show you a movie And in this movie you will see all our impact species and impact areas, because of this link between species conservation and nature restoration, we build impact areas around our impact species. And the video that you will see will show all the impact areas and impact species that we have. And then later on I will delve into 3 of them to show you and explain you what we are doing in these fields. So again, our mission. So we have African plains, that's an impact area with the Rupel's vulture as impact species. African jungle with the pygmy hippo as an impact species. Then we have Asian corridors with the Asian elephant as the impact species. Sustainable North Sea with the flapper skate as the impact species. Caribbean coast with the sergeant fish as the impact species. Himalayan peaks with the red panda as the impact species. Nature nearby, so the animal, the species in our surrounding with the Dalmatian pelican as the impact species. And then last resort, that's the impact species that's not built around the geographic region, but that's the impact area where we focus on the species that are nearly extinct in the wild. So also the guiding principle, stop the loss, is important in that impact area. And so I will come back to that later, but what we also did is that in every impact area we focused on a specific thing. So for example, in African plains we are focusing on poaching, in African jungle we are focusing on overconsumption. So we're not telling the whole story in every impact area, but highlighting one topic and focus on that. So I will now delve into 3 of the impact areas, starting with Himalayan peaks, with again the red panda as the impact species. And also here what you see is again the link between nature restoration and species conservation, because for every impact area we developed some impact or some goals, and we developed goals on nature restoration, so in this case on expand the green, and on reverse the red. So one of our goals is to have contributed to the release of 20 red pandas and have established a large genetic data set through a joint PhD project with universities. And I have to say that these goals are just for the first 5 years. So the master plan is till 2050, but we all know that a lot can happen within now and 2050, so we set our sub-goals for the next 5 years. But again, what's the benefit? What's the value of reintroducing red pandas when there's no forest around? Because deforestation is the topic that we're focusing on in this impact area. So what we're also doing is that we within 5 years we want to have 1 million trees planted and also purchased 35 hectares to be able to do forestation. So here you see that in some pictures. So the augmentation project that we are working on to release red pandas, the forestation project with here my colleague Jello Weerman, who is a stumble keeper for the red pandas, had to also make new habitat for the red pandas. And then another important thing is that we also want to let our visitors experience this. So this is not in our zoo, but we want to build such a tree nursery also in our zoo, so that you as a visitor can also experience what we are doing in the field, and that you can also contribute by, for example, donating a tree to our project. And then for us the circle is round. So then Caribbean coast, so again, we set some goals on the for nature restoration and for species conservation. But I think the most important thing here is that we started to develop a floating breeding system, what you're seeing here. So we developed this in our zoo. We started experimenting with it in our zoo, and now in Bonaire, one of the Antillian islands, we have this laying in the sea above one of the reefs. And the goal is that we can breed reef species in a couple of years with this model of this system. Because, of course, a lot of reef species have it very, are experiencing harsh times, and we hope that we can give them a boost with this system that's on the reef itself, so you don't have to bring eggs or larvae to land to breed with them. But then again, what's the value of having extra fish without coral reefs? So we are also focusing on coral reef restoration in this, on the island and in this region. And here again some nice pictures of the system and the people that are working there. And it actually started with this system and the focus on reef fish species. But at the moment we are also focusing on the lesser Antillian iguana. So a couple of years ago, a couple of individuals were sent to our zoo, and now we are breeding with them, and we hope that we can also set some nice projects for that species in this impact area. Then we have Asian corridors. We have the Asian elephant as the impact species, and actually this story started a couple of years ago when we started a PhD project on the Asian elephant, and we are now having a quite unique data set of genetic data for the Asian elephant. And at the moment we are now, and that data set allows us to also now develop a tool which can be used in the field to do genomic research to the wild populations. So a couple of weeks ago we went to India, and we started this collaborative project with the Wildlife Institute of India, because we now want to develop a SNP panel, so a genetic tool with which we can also do, with which we can also perform genomic research to the wild populations. And the Wildlife Institute of India, it will help them to identify the most important corridors in the field, which link multiple Asian elephant populations with each other. So again, it starts with species conservation, it starts with a project within the zoo focusing on the genomic diversity in the zoo population, but in the end you can make impact for the wild population, and also again the link between nature restoration and species conservation. So this is our story, based on our history, based on our expertise, but if you bring it down to some key principles, I think these are the ones. Starting with making real choices. So if we want to make impact, we need to make choices. Define where you can make a difference based on institutional expertise and knowledge gained over the years. And of course it's not easy to choose, because it's already mentioned today there are 1 million plant and animal species endangered, so there's a lot to choose. But we really think that we need to choose if you want to make a real impact. And we think what's also important to do this on a more coordinated level, maybe on an EASA level, because if more zoos will follow this approach and will also choose on which species they want to focus on, we think that we should do this in a coordinated way, because if we make these choices on our own, then we don't know with what kind of collections or populations we will end up. And I think that we can only make an impact as a community if we have viable populations. So the one plan approach, Of course, also already a known term within our community, but I think it's two ways. So you really need to link the animal in your collection or in your care with the animal in the wild. So the things that I showed today, the red panda, the elephant, what we are doing for the red panda, for the elephant, and for the river fish species, we can do those things because we have the animals also in our zoo, where we start with pilot studies, experimenting with the system, for example, but also taking the blood to be able to do genomic research. So really link the animal in your zoo with the animal that's living in the wild, but also the other way around. So what you're doing in the field, like for example with the Asian elephant, we are working on the corridors, and as you see here, we will also build a corridor in our own zoo, so that you also, as a visitor, can experience what we are doing in the field. So for us, the one plan approach is two ways. Locally embedded, well, we need to ensure that all activities outside our park are locally anchored and all actions are in collaboration with local organizations and the local community. So for example, in Bonaire, where we have now a hub, our Caribbean hub we call it, in this first stage a lot of Dutch people in this case are working there, but the goal is that in the end it's run by local people. And I think what's also important is to keep it simple, concrete and fluid. So, and that's in both language is use and conveying the message. Choose what problem you want to highlight and give visitors the tools to contribute to conservation. So, what I mentioned already for the impact areas, not telling the whole story. So for example, poaching, overconsumption, deforestation, of course these are all problems that are apparent in all the impact areas. But if you really want to make impact, we think it's very important to highlight one thing so that you can also make it understandable for your visitor and also reachable for them to contribute to the solution. And the fluid thing I think is also important, what I said, so okay, we now have chosen for this stand, but I think we really have to see in the coming years how things will develop, and maybe we have to adjust our list. So I think there's now also some time for questions, or maybe later on. And you can also scan the QR code to read the master plan. We also have some hard copy versions, but not a lot of them, so you can come to me or my colleague Dionne Jacobs. She also has some versions, and feel free to ask questions. Thank you.
Excellent. I love to see all the phones go up when the QR code comes. I like the way you combine your master plan with, when you know Rotterdam Zoo, also the exhibits. So it's wonderful. We are running short of time, so we'll keep all the questions for the 4 speakers to the end of the session. So remember your question, write it down, and I'll pull him back on stage later.
Okay, thank you.
So next we have one of our young colleagues, may I say that, in our community with Caroline Albig. We have somebody where you can really feel the passion for conservation since day one. And when you start looking at strategies and planning and you get involved with this step in our actions for conservation, one important aspect is the funding. How do we get this all funded, how we get started, and I think Caroline will talk a little bit more about that.